The Runway Overrun Warning and Protection System is a new addition to modern aircraft. It warns pilots during approach and initial rollout if the runway they're landing on is too short to stop. The Runway Overrun system continuously computes several times a second the landing distance on dry as well as the landing distance on wet for current conditions and compare that with the landing distance available, which it knows from the Flight Management and Guidance System database. It uses a TAWS database, which is actually part of the TCAS transponder unit in the aircraft, and compares that with the actual aircraft position and track to give a warning if runway is too short. It is available on final approach, while the detection and calculations start at 2,000 feet. During the approach, the runway overrun warning arms at 500 feet and will then give indications to the pilots if it calculates that the landing distance on wet or dry is not sufficient for the landing distance available. When calculating the landing distance on dry and wet condition, it considers all landing weights and CG ranges for the aircraft, including overweight landing. It considers both config 3 and config full. The published landing distance available, LDA, is its reference. It calculates for both autopilot on and autopilot off, all wind conditions, dry and wet conditions, no failure affecting the landing performance, as well as the 15% Airbus safety margin, which is built in to get factored landing distance. So it doesn't matter if you're landing one configuration or the other, the system here has calculated and takes everything into consideration to build a profile of the worst case scenario. The runway overrun warning, the ROW function, enhances crew awareness during approach. It arms automatically at 500 feet ADL and then starts computing landing distances for both dry and wet. The ROW, the warning part, assumes maximum manual braking, idle reversers for computations on dry runway, and max reversers for computations on wet runway. It works like this. The runway overrun warning, once activated, will trigger below 400 feet ADL if it computes that the landing distance on a wet runway is greater than the landing distance available. An indication on the PFD that says here, if wet, runway too short. But it is an if, which means there's no aural alert to the pilots. As long as there's no wet runway, you are capable of stopping on the runway available. But if wet, the crew should take immediate action and abort the landing, initiating a go-around. If below 400 feet, it has calculated that the landing distance on a dry runway, remember, it used max reversers for its computation, has calculated that that is higher than the LDA, well then it will trigger an aural alert, runway too short, as well as give a red indication to both pilots on the PFD, runway too short. This is not an if, this is a runway too short fact. Crews should immediately take action and initiate a go-around. The warning right here is just that, it's just a warning, and it is available during approach. So when triggered, should prompt the pilots to do a go-around. The ROP, the Runway Overrun Protection, is available at landing during deceleration. This will activate if the current braking performance is not sufficient to stop the aircraft on the landing distance available. It will trigger to the pilot's max reverse or max braking, depending on what you are doing or not doing during the deceleration. The aural warning will first trigger brake, max braking, if the pedals are not fully pushed. It will trigger set max reverse if max reversers are not selected, and if the aircraft still has not slowed down sufficiently to stop on the LDA below 80 knots, then it will trigger keep max reverse aural warning. The RLP is automatically inhibited when the ground speed goes below 30 knots.